Can I just check those in the room can hear the interpreter clearly?
Yes.
You can. Thank you. Okay, thank you, and good morning, everyone. Welcome along to this morning's meeting. This is being live streamed via Microsoft Teams and will be recorded and made available for viewing at a later time on the Council website. Please follow the good practice guidance, which includes muting your microphones and switching off your videos when you're not addressing the meeting. Writing speak in the Teams chat function when you do want to contribute. Please don't repeat any contributions that are already made by previous members. No material should be posted in the chat function as it's intended to be a part of a discussion. The usual standing orders apply, including that any votes will be undertaken by roll call. And if any member is to leave the meeting, please either inform us via Teams, write leave in the chat function, and then join when you do rejoin the meeting, just so that we can keep track on whether the meeting does have its quote. Now, we will welcome oh, hold on, sorry, I don't think my sound has gone. Hold on. My apologies. Yep. So we are welcoming everyone from the chamber. My apologies, I had a sound issue there. So we're on to point number 1, and I will ask Claire.
Okay,
Apologies and chair of approval members for remote participation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I can confirm we've got 6 members present this morning, 4 members in the team in the chamber, being the chair, Councillor Howie, Councillor Lowe and Councillor Stitt. 2 members present on Teams, being the vice chair and Councillor Young, and I believe there's 3 apologies this morning from Councillors Blake, Campbell and McFarlane, and we also have Youth Councillor Megan Rain present this morning, is supported by Youth Worker Victoria Townsend. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that. Moving on to number 2, any declaration of interest. Do members have any statement in connection? Oh, yes.
Page 115, it's on the Tackling Poverty and Inequalities Fund on the, excuse me, page 116 at the top of table 1, Delbete Community Initiative. I'm actually one of the drivers who delivers food parcels when required, but I don't think it'll determine if we're sitting in listening to debate. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you for that declaration there, Councillor. Is there any other declarations of interest to be mentioned at this point? Okay, moving on to point 3. We are approving the minute of previous meeting, dated the 17th of May. Are we happy to note this meeting? Yep.
Thank you, Chair. It's page 10, Declarations of Interest. I think it's a typo. We've got 3.33. 3.3 says Ian Howie, Kim Lowe and Andy McFarlane. Well, I think that Andy McFarlane should be Pauline Drysdale, because Pauline's the other member of this committee who attends Stewartry Sports Council. I think it's just a typo. Thank you.
Understood. Thank you for that, Councillor. We'll take a note of that. And that has been amended. Thank you. Anything else to disclose at this point? Excellent. Number 4. This is the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service. First meeting took place in April of 22, going through to March. And I'm pleased to inform that the note has been taken there for a 35% reduction in incidents reported to Scottish Fire and Rescue. That is down by 11%. Very useful stats for your local communities to share that in comparison to last year. It mentions there that we are committed to water safety and having that dialogue and conversation with the local community to deliver water awareness as well. That's at Gates House and Wineham Primary School. Do excuse the interpreter's pronunciation if that's not correct. And that also includes the work there on Loch, I think it's Ken, that's pronounced. So yeah, we're taking on that conversation from this point in regards to sharing the water safety, which does include resources like leaflets and so on that would be relevant to the individual. So all that being said, it has been noted, and we will remain in the same system there for applying for that particular area. Any members that want to ask any questions about that particular point, now is the time to do so. Okay. Councillor Drysdale.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. Thank you very much for the report, Lucy. It's a very positive report in terms of the reduction of call-outs, etc. So thank you for that. And it looked to be very positive over the summer with the control of wildfires up in the whole region of the Stewartry. So thanks. I was just going to commend you on the work that you did at the side of Loch Ken, and thank you for the force turning up for the Loch Ken Trust Day, which I attended, and to say that I had a positive conversation with members of your team. And you'll know now that the Rangers have actually put the water safety boat at the Galloway Activity Centre. So hopefully, Lucy, going forward, there'll be great communication between yourselves and the lifeboats in terms of any call-outs that are made so that people can be reached safely and quickly. So I'd just like to thank you for the cohesive and coordinated work that you've done with those parties, because safety on the loch is really, really important with the increased number of people enjoying outdoor activities. So it was just to put that on record. Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Lucy.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Councillor Drysdale. So let's introduce Lucy to our members here today. If there's any questions that you have for Lucy, now is a good time to do so. Yes, Councillor.
Good morning, Chair. Sorry to interrupt you. Can I just introduce myself to the committee, please?
Yep, go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Lucy Donaldson, and I'm a station commander based in Dumfries. I'm here on behalf of Station Commander Claire McNay, who is the Stewartry District Station Commander. Unfortunately, she already had her leave booked, but was keen that somebody came, so I'm here on her behalf. If it is okay with the Chair, I'd like to read a statement on her behalf before we begin.
Absolutely, yes, please do. Go ahead.
Thank you.
All members are happy.
Thank you very much. So I am pleased to post another positive report to the Stewartry Area Committee period. Can I take this opportunity to thank all operational and support staff and many partners who have made a significant contribution in keeping our communities safe in Stewartry and the wider Dumfries and Galloway area. In addition to the covering and performance report, I have also included a copy of the Time for Change document, Reducing Unwanted Fire Alarm Signal, as our response to fire alarms in commercial business and workplace premises changed as of the 1st of July 2023. I would like to take a moment to provide a brief overview to the committee of the SFRS operational changes for 2023-24. At the moment, the impact of inflation, pay awards, and the likelihood of a flat cash settlement for the next 4 years means our budget simply doesn't cover all our costs. And SFRS need to find £11 million savings this year. Together with our legal responsibility to balance our budget, we must prioritise service changes which help close the financial gap, deliver modernisation and achieve our strategic outcomes. As our understanding of the risks facing our staff and communities improves and the technology in our sector continues to evolve, we must review our staff and station footprint and ensure our people and resources are best placed to protect communities. The work to do this will form part of a strategic service review programme over the next 4 years. However, to allow us time to scope any longer change, while achieving the savings we need in 23-24, we are making a number of changes within this current financial year, such as the planned closure of our Hamilton West SDA headquarters and the strict management of the support staff vacancies. In relation to our frontline service delivery, 3 significant changes will take effect this September. In relation to our, the temporary withdrawal of 10 whole-time appliances across the service, a reduction in the number of high-reach appliances deployed from 26 to 16, and standardisation of water rescue in the City of Glasgow. I must stress to the committee that these changes do not impact on the service delivery provision in Dumfries and Galloway. Any permanent changes to stations and appliances will only be made following full engagement and consultation with all stakeholders, which includes our staff, communities and partners. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to read that statement. We were keen to ensure that any of the national news coverage that the committee had heard was not in relation to Dumfries and Galloway at this stage.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that report and articulating that to the group here. At this point, we will ask Councillor Slatt.
Thanks, Chair. Morning, Lucy. I'll not have my usual rant. It's on page 40, retained duty system, making reference to Dalbeattie. I spoke to a retained fireman about a month ago, and he told me that they've been successful in recruiting new members to the retained staff at Dalbeattie. Do you have the figures?
So I can confirm that Claire wanted me to note that the Dalbeattie availability has increased and continues to do so. They have a couple of new personnel, one which is fully competent, having transferred from another station, with good daytime availability, who are keen to be upskilled to drivers and safe to manage. What I can tell you is that availability has significantly increased even over the last couple of months. So there's good progress being made there. So really good news.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
Yeah, good morning. Page 44, the automatic fire alarms, and I can see why with 28,000 calls, that's an awful lot of time and effort. I'm just wondering within your resources in terms of education and information to premises where that happens about making sure that, you know, dust and the lack of maintenance isn't causing a problem, so that we know that all the calls are genuine, and what if that's possible.
So as you'll see from the additional appendix, time for change, reducing unwanted fire alarm systems, the AFA procedure for turnouts changed from the 1st of July. We have already seen a significant reduction in the number of attendances by SFRS appliances to business premises. Under Fire Scotland Act 2005, Chapter 1 duties, duty holders have the responsibility to maintain their fire detection systems. Whenever personnel do attend any automatic fire, was an initial investigation as to the cause and advice given at the time. Any subsequent repeat calls are followed up by Fire Safety Enforcement Department, who are able to then give further advice and support to aim to reduce the number of unwanted fire alarms.
Thank you, Chair. Lucy, do all local appliances still have the necessary equipment to carry out fast water rescue as they did previously?
Fast water rescue, can you clarify your question, please?
It comes following an incident, I believe, a couple of years ago at Glenlee, where a car driving along, I can't remember the name of the road, but they got submerged in water, and it involved police and fire personnel having to go in, but I believe it was a very risky task carried out by the police. I believe at that time the fire service had additional equipment for gear to carry out rescues. I appreciate you've got your boat at Newton Stewart and your boat at Dumfries, but my understanding was their local appliances had additional equipment to carry out water rescue. I'm just ensuring that that's still in place.
No equipment has been removed from appliances in the area with regard to water rescue. We have, as you say, our specially skilled swift rescue technicians based at Newton Stewart and Dumfries. They are the only ones who are qualified to enter water, but all personnel are given a level 1 water awareness training where they are aware of the safety required to attend such incidents.
Thank you.
Sorry, can I just come in? Can I just check that we don't have a glitch with the interpreter?
I could see the interpreter just fine, but thank you for asking. And I'm being asked if it's okay. From my perspective, it's okay. I don't know if there's a problem. Okay, no problem. Councillor McFarlane, you had your hand up. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Please accept my apologies for for my late arrival. As I've put in the chat, I had a bit of a home emergency and then I've had some technical difficulties. It may be that I'm asking questions that have already been asked. I hope not. And if I have, then please accept my apologies and keep me right. Having gone through the report, which is fairly comprehensive, little bit disappointed that a lot of the information isn't disaggregated. It's just a lot of it seems to be for the whole of D&G. Now, I can understand some of the difficulties that you encounter in breaking it down. There's one part there on page 32, I think it is. You've got something, I think it's 1,153 home safety visits. Firstly, I don't know how many of those would be in the Stewartry, but I'd be interested to know if that's impacted or has been impacted upon by the new licensing scheme for holiday let cottages and such like. Similarly, 372 fire safety audits, which seems to be quite a bit of an increase in what you've had previously. And just so as not to have to come back in again. Also, you mentioned vehicle fires, something like 3.18% of your demand. I'm wondering how many of those may be electrical vehicles and are they causing you any issues? Thanks very much.
Okay, to answer your first question, our home fire safety visits are for domestic premises and are to give home fire safety advice to owners, occupiers, as well as testing and installing smoke detectors where appropriate. Fire safety enforcement carry out the audit required for short-term lets. So they are two separate departments, both coming under prevention and protection. We have seen a rise in short-term let audits due to the requirement for those renting out their properties on a commercial basis, needing to have specific fire safety and fire detection systems. Coming to your second question, we have fortunately not seen so many electric vehicles involved in fire in the area or across the whole of Dumfries and Galloway to date. We are aware that they are on the increase on our roads, and we are continually training our personnel and raising awareness of the additional hazards and dangers that these vehicles can have, especially when involved in fire.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McFarlane, are you happy with that answer? You are? Yeah. Okay.
Yes, thanks.
Councillor Drysdale, you had your hand up.
Thank you very much, Lucy, and apologies for coming in too early a while back. It was just to say a business person has alerted a point about fire extinguishers to myself, which might be worth taking back to your central meetings. I don't know, but to have fire extinguishers serviced for businesses at the moment has now reached a point that it's actually cheaper to buy new fire extinguishers online and have them delivered, which is not helping with business costs or our transition to net zero. So I just wondered if you could have a wee look into that, because for Scotland it's really important that people are kept safe in businesses and in homes, but also that actually servicing fire extinguishers doesn't become so costly that it's unmanageable. So it was just to bring that up and raise it, and it might be something you could look into. Thank you very much. Thanks, Chair.
Good, thank you. Sorry, Lucy, please feel free to answer.
Sorry, I was just going to say I will take your point back to fire safety enforcement and see if this is a national issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Just want to check if there are any more questions before we move on to next item, and if you're happy to approve the recommendations. Councillor Lowe.
Thank you. I just wonder if we've got any record of incidents from the disposable vapes. There have been situations over the country where bins have been on fire. Whether that's beginning to be an issue at all or is recorded separately.
At this point in time, that kind of detail is not specifically recorded unless recognised by the crew in attendance as being the cause.
Okay, so if we're happy then, what we'll do is we'll go with the recommendations before we move on to the next item, item 5. So just checking if there's any other comments. Okay, so we'll move on. Right, so we'll move on to item 5. Excuse me, bear with me for a moment, please. I'd like to just check if we'd like to move a recommendation for the report, Dumfries and Galloway, for the fire safety service for the period of April 22 to the 31st of March 23, and the appendix related to it. So if we're all happy with that, we'll go with that recommendation.
Agreed.
That's agreed, is it? Great, thank you.
Agreed.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. We'll move on to item 5. So our next performance report is from the Education and Learning Directorate. This report covers the performances from the 1st of April 2022 to the 31st of March 2023. And first of all, I'd like to comment on the positive feedback from the Care Inspectorate visits at Dalry and Gatehouse Early Learning Centres. I understand the report for the 3rd meeting or setting has not yet been published, and therefore we're not able to get any performance feedback at that time. But it is pleasing to see the performance values recognised in the appendix set against the values from the previous year. Also, I'd like to recognise that we do need to scrutinise the performance, and we need to be aware of the trends that are going on, and it's helpful to include the performance figures that have been articulated over the past few years. We need to distinguish what they are, but it's also reassuring to read that all 10 performance indicators that are on track. So some of these performance indicators are linked to achievement, and I'm sure officers will fill us in on the detail. So opening the floor to any comments.
Yep.
Over to you, Councillor. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Gillian, just a wee query. Page 58, overall results. When we see for 2019, the good results then, up to 2022, P147 seem to have been struggling to get back up, but there's a big success rate in S3. Is there any reason because of that?
Good morning, members. I think it's a really interesting observation. While I absolutely trust their teacher judgment in primary schools, one could argue that our primary schools are less confident in securing the children's attainment levels, in that they are judging that the young people still have work to do, and we are working with our schools across Dumfries and Galloway to give our teachers the confidence that they can report the children having met that level because I am sure that this is a confidence and reporting issue rather than reduced attainment. And you can see that in our secondary school attainment. Our secondary school attainment in the Stewartry is very strong and improving. And I would like to think that this year we can reassure our primary teachers that the children that they have in their classes are meeting these levels and that they can be confident in marking them as such.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Gillian.
Yep, go ahead. Thank you. Appreciate that. Councillor Lowe.
Thank you. Page 64, the positive destinations. So this is where pupils are at 3 months after leaving school. I'm very aware that some of those may well be in temporary jobs or they're considering whether to go to college. Is there any follow-up after that to see where they are a year later to see if they've considered that college might be a better move or that they're doing something different? Just to know what they're doing 3 months later is a very short-term gap.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lowe. This is a key point for us. This is the national destination measure, but we need to take a longer term view. I know many young people who move into positive destinations and, as you say, 6 months, 8 months, a year later, feel that they wish a different move. Perhaps they wish a change of college course, or they are in short-term employment. We do have data from Skills Development Scotland and from HMRC. But as it stands at the moment, this is the only data that we have. There are some interesting trends in this, in that many more young people in the Stewartry are now moving into employment directly than they are in going to college. And I think that's a picture we need to drill into as to whether these are seen as positive choices or whether the local college provision is not meeting our young people's needs. Thank you.
Thank you, that's fine.
Yeah, would you like to respond? Yeah, great. Is there any other questions to follow up then? Councillor McFarlane.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Looking at page 49 in our papers, it said that the exclusion rate for looked after children dropped significantly with 0 exclusions. Whilst that's significant and it's obviously very good, there's no detail of the actual number of exclusions there have been, where they've been, why they've been, and what sort of support is put in place for those children to make sure we can get them back into mainstream schooling. So I'd be interested if you could give me a response on that, and then I do have a follow-up, please.
Thank you. It was actually, apologies, it was actually this committee, it was Stewartry Area Committee, that challenged the Directorate in having a target for looked after children exclusions. And I am very pleased to come back to report to Stewartry Area Committee that we have 0 exclusions, because that is our expectation. As corporate parents, we must aim never to exclude a looked after child, and that was the expectation of Stewartry Area Committee, which was then remitted to Education and Learning and has been agreed by all members. So yes, that is a positive. In terms of the other exclusion figures, we have 10 incidents of primary exclusion and 11 incidents of secondary exclusion. Now these are, I don't have the figures in front of me, but these are short-term up to 10 days as a maximum, but they may be as short as half a day. So these young people are back in mainstream education, and the time for exclusion was used for planning and good partnership working and cooling off following whatever incident had triggered the exclusion. So I can reassure members that exclusions in Stewartry are very low, and we have good plans in place to quickly reintroduce the children back to school where appropriate. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for that. And as you said, looked after children. I think it really is important that we get the support and exclude only when absolutely necessary and avoid it in all sorts of circumstances if we can. Thank you for that. I mean, I don't know, I'd be interested in the view of other members, but you said there that there was 10 primary children and 11 secondary children, and that the length of time for which they've been excluded is clearly variable. I don't know if other members would agree that perhaps it would be useful to have a note of the number of days, so the sort of number of pupils who have been excluded from each, and the sort of the number of days in which that would total, just to give us a sort of context. I think that might be helpful. But moving on to my second sort of point was, we've got 70.4% of literacy and numeracy in school leavers, and I'm just wondering how that is measured. And then the second point was that the 40% of are getting 5+ qualifications at level 6, and why is that such a low target? And it's actually down from last year, which again I still consider as a fairly low target of 41%. Thank you.
Thank you. 5 hires is perceived as 5 hires is perceived as the gold standard, whether you agree with that or not. But 5 at level 6 equates to 5 hires, and a 40% target is a good target. You don't, that is not always achievable for all our young people to achieve 5 hires. So these results do reflect 21-22. There has been a dip, but I'm pleased that in 22-23 we have returned to our pre-COVID levels. So the attainment in Stewartry is traditionally very strong in the senior phase, and we can see that although there has been a dip in recent years, I can reassure that the 5 at level 6 has returned to the pre-COVID levels and a strong attainment that we expect of our Stewartry schools. In terms of literacy and numeracy, these are made up of individual units. So they may be part of a qualification in the senior phase, part of a level 4 or level 5 qualification. It's not necessarily always National 5 or National 4 English or National 4-5 Maths, but it would be units within those types of qualifications. And it's very important to us as a service that we expect learners to have qualifications in literacy and numeracy as they leave school, because we know how important that is for employers and for young people's life beyond school.
Thank you so much for that. We have a hands up from Councillor Drysdale.
Thank you very much, Gillian, for the report. And yes, I think we're all aware as to the importance of GIRFEC, and it's great to see the figures coming down. I was just going to ask you today, what are your views, Gillian, with regards to the MATAC scheme, in terms of the fact that the Education Department's not included in those monthly meetings? If children and young people are having difficulties with their mental health and emotional support, bullying, etc., or bullying themselves. Is there a way that we could include somebody from the Education Directorate in the MATAC meetings going forward, just so that these children are flagged up earlier and can work alongside, say, external external agencies such as Befriending, the youth group with Mark Malloy and his team, and just get some help for these children a little bit earlier on, because we're very aware as to the delay in the CAMS system. And I just wondered if you could give me your viewpoints on that, because you're clued up with it. Thank you very much. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you.
Yeah, please do respond. Thank you.
Thank you. Multi-agency tasking and coordination groups and the MARAC groups in terms of how we coordinate our support for these young people. It's really important across our public protection partnership. There are many reasons why our young people may have poor mental health. But if there's a view that education is not at the table, then we would have to look as to how those connections are made through our referral routes from school. So we have a safeguarding manager who would look to work with partners in police and social work to make sure that young people affected by issues are given the help that they require. So it may be that they're not actually at the meeting, but they certainly would have direct referral routes in. We're also, although there are national delays in referrals to CAMS, we do work closely with our youth work colleagues and have fantastic support of early intervention and counselling in schools. So clearly the needs of young people are a broad spectrum, from short-term early intervention on specific issues to much deeper, longer-term trauma responses. And we do work in partnership across the public protection and mental health agencies to meet the needs of children. I know that that's a very broad response, Councillor Drysdale. If there are particular issues that you're concerned about, perhaps we could take those offline if there are specific cases that you're aware of that I might not be. But we don't always need to be at the table to have our voices heard, and I would be confident that our safeguarding manager should be in conjunction working with police and social work in these cases with our most vulnerable children.
That's great. Councillor Drysdale, do you want this opportunity to respond to that?
Thank you, Chair. Gillian, that is very helpful. And yes, if it's okay with you, I'll possibly take it up with you offline afterwards, because, you know, specific cases are important to look into. So there's just possibly, in my mind, as Chair of Social Work, a little bit of a gap between the communication between education and possibly the social work teams. But again, I'm sure you can update me on that. And I thank you for the time you'll afford me. Thanks, Chair.
That's great. Thank you. And thanks to everyone who's contributed. If we're happy to move on to the recommendations then. Okay, members are asked to consider 5.1, the Education and Learning Directorate, area-based successes and developments, as detailed in the key successes section of this report, which is paragraph 4.1 to 4.3. Also bring to your attention 5.2, scrutinise the area report for Stewartry as set out in Appendix 1, and 5.3, the review of the attainment summary for Stewartry for 2021-22 as set out in Appendix 2. Are we happy to proceed?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you, and thank you, Gillian, for coming and participating today. Thank you. Okay, moving on to item 6. Mark your microphone.
Apologies, Chair. Apologies, Chair. My microphone was muted. Would you mind starting again, please? So the Communities Directorate end of year assessment, the business plans covering 2019 to 2023. So we've now agreed that we have the report, the Community Directorate's annual performance report. And as always, the report and the Directorate covers a wide range of services that are vital to our communities. During the report period, the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit schemes were completed for the primary schools and communities at Twineholme, Gelston, Borkencan, and Lockfoot and Lochrutten Primary School. The 20-mile-an-hour speed limit scheme for the primary school for the village of Kirkundson was completed on July 2023, and the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit schemes for the primary schools and communities of Borg and Palnaki will be progressed later on this year. Again, apologies from the interpreter for any mispronunciations of local towns or villages. However, it's good to see the detail of the shoreline management plan. This plan establishes an approach for managing the risk of coastal flooding and erosion along the Dumfries and Galloway coast, and will be used as a planning tool to identify areas which require development and any constraints associated with coastal erosion and potential flooding risks. It's also good to see the disaggregated numbers of young people attending youth events in the Stewartry area, and it's heartening to see the number of accredited awards being achieved by local young people. For myself, I'd like to offer my congratulations to them, and also we can see the publication of 10,000 Voices report, which captured the views of 11,000 young people, and this will be very useful in supporting the council, partners, communities, and ensuring that young people are included in their views are included in our plans. The support for adult learning and employability are also clearly progressing well in our area. So the head of the neighbourhood services, Harry Hay, is in attendance for any questions any members may have. So members, any questions or comments? Councillor Howe, over to you.
Morning, Harry. Harry, just a couple of points, more seeking advice. Local flood risk management plan is obviously restricted to the shoreline. Where do we raise concerns about flooding issues to be put in a plan that are away from the shores? I'm thinking the flooding that we received in Castle Douglas about 7 years ago, when the bunds were overrun with water from Loch Dee. So that was my first one. And the second question, Harry, is regarding to do with improvements to play park equipment, and it's how do we get schemes involved in that. You may be aware that the only piece of play equipment from Lochfoot was removed without a great deal of consultation from the local community earlier this year. How do we get Lochfoot included in future plans, please?
Harry, if I may, over to you to respond.
Thank you. Good morning, members. Thank you, Chair. Councillor Harry, so in relation to any flood risk concerns, if there are any getting picked up by members anywhere in the Stewartry, very much welcome receiving those. Simply email myself. I will ensure they are then passed to the flood management team, and either they will be already aware of them and they'll have arrangements in place to either mitigate or provide advice, etc. That includes other colleagues in other parts of the council. If there's specific intervention required, we'll be very happy to coordinate that response. In terms of improvements to play park equipment, through Communities Committee, we allocate an annual capital budget that gets investment across the whole region, and to try and influence and inform that investment, there are regular play park inspection carried out. We also capture as much as possible feedback from communities who perhaps want to develop or bolster existing provision, and that's all then reflected in proposals for the forthcoming year. So specifically in relation to that play area, happy to pick it up offline, Councillor Howie, if there's a specific group or interested party. Very much welcome any kind of discussion to look at what we can do to invest and improve provision at that particular site. Thank you very much.
Ideal. Thanks, Harry.
Thank you. Over to the next question. Over to you. Oh, sorry. Councillor, is it Slater?
Thanks, Chair. I'm just going to make some comments, Harry, about the neighbourhood services, page 6 and 9, about the men's cycle and women's cycle race in Castle Douglas. I attended that day, and I'll just say the weather was absolutely shocking. It was great to see Mark Carney's taking part, but I'd also like to mention a local lassie, Rebecca Saunderson, we sponsor through the Sport Council, took place in the women's race and finished a credible 45 out of the thing. And also I'd like to say that page 73, I think Stepping Stones Food Bank Project and Dalbeattie Community Initiative, the work they're doing, issuing out food parcels, is unbelievable. And I think when you see the amount of meals they delivered and the amount of tonnage of food, I think it's great that they're doing this, but it's serious times when you think people are relying on food banks. And I'd just like to say in page 81, the attendances at Castle Douglas and Kirkcudbright swimming pools is amazing, the percentage that they're up. It's good to see that they're up and running well. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for that comment. I can see Councillor Drysdale, you have your hand up. Over to you.
Thanks, Chair. Hi, Harry. Thanks very much for the report. Yeah, I would reiterate Councillor Stitt's points. It's really good to see so many people taking up sport across the region, and the work that's been done by the council to encourage people to keep fit, get outside, and therefore reduce the pressure, hopefully, on the NHS. I think that's the long-term goal. But Harry, sorry to be a pain, but page 71, 4.8.3, Shaw Head's not listed. Is that work still to be undertaken? That's my first question. I know we did the visits to look at the Shaw Head primary school for a 20-mile-an-hour limit. And secondly, just to reiterate, to bring it to members' attention, we're all aware that there was a terrible accident yesterday in Ayrshire, where I am at the moment, with a young child and a very large tractor. I'd still like to push the points forward that on all the outskirts of all of our towns, particularly Castle Douglas at the moment, when driving up here on Sunday night, I saw 3 sets of different people walking from Christmichael into Castle Douglas with children and dogs on the road into the oncoming traffic. Nobody cycles on that road anymore. Well, not many people. It's too dangerous. It's too busy. I still want to make the point as a member of this committee that we really must start looking at the environs of our towns for safe cycling and walking. And I really feel strongly about that at the moment for the safety of our communities. So, but really my question is just to do with 4.8.3, Harry, and an update in Shaw Head. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Chair. Through you.
Sorry, Harry, to interrupt. Councillor Drysdale, thank you for raising that point. I mean, for myself personally, these are concerns that are raised. I raise them for myself, but also concerns raised by people living in my ward, and we do need to consider this, and we do need to look at how this is mitigated. But Harry, please, over to you.
Thanks, Chair. In terms of the Shaw Head question, I think because it falls out with this particular reporting period, which was up to the end of March 2023, I think it was slightly later on in the programme. But what I will do outside this meeting is just clarify that and get an email dropped to all relevant members with that information. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I can see Councillor McFarlane. You have your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Harry, thank you for coming along today. Got a couple of questions based on page 89. The very first item on there says that number of farms checked to ensure legal compliance is 135 out of 150, which clearly is not very far from where we need to be in relation to that. But I do think that what's perhaps more important and significant in relation to that is the actual compliance. So yeah, we're doing the visits, but you know, are 135 out of 50, are they all complying? Or is it basically that we've attended 135 out of 150 of our target, but actually only a proportion of those are complying? And equally, the item directed below it, the compliance with allergen declarations. I mean, it's not so long ago since I think it was Pret a Manger were found guilty of not putting sufficient allergen information on where somebody choked on a sandwich because of allergen. So that's my first point. The second one is on the part right at the bottom, where we've got the number of food businesses inspected by Environmental Health Authority at 281 out of 670, which seems considerably lower than it should be. And the one below it again, the number of businesses inspected by Trading Standards annually being 300 out of 350. Seems that we're falling well short in both of those. If you could give me some sort of guidance on that, Harry, that'd be great.
Harry, please go ahead and answer.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So in terms of the first question, the actual compliance levels aren't currently contained within these performance reports, but certainly, yeah, it's a very good point. It's all very well carrying out a visit, but the important thing is, as a result of that visit, are the premises actually compliant or not? Because that would be the key information that the public and indeed elected members would be interested in. So out with this meeting again, I will get that information from the food standards team and get that circulated. In terms of the second question, yeah, the service, after speaking to Vlad Valenti, who's the head of service responsible for that team, very aware that the number of these visits is lower than planned, which is simply down to the capacity. The same team were significantly pulled off those types of visits, primarily down to bird flu, avian flu, for example. So they're well aware that there's a need to programme these visits in. So I think the aim ultimately is to get back on target, but because the team have to get diverted onto other issues, it sometimes makes that difficult to do it within the original timescales. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thanks for that, Harry, because I do see that the previous year, obviously the figures were significantly better. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any further questions or comments? With regards to the flood risk, you know, we know with the heavy rains we've been having, especially this month, and we know further rains fall is expected, and we are well aware of the effects of climate change, and you know, I think we do need to consider these. But I'd just like to move on to recommendations for 6.1. and to consider the overall summary of performance within the individuals in the head of service, with regards to the head of service business plans in the Stewartry area. And 6.2, consider the additional area-based successes and developments as detailed in the key achievement section of this report, paragraphs 4.6 to 4.21.9, and to consider any aspects of performance to be referred to the relevant future committee. So, are members happy to agree to these recommendations? We are? Great, thank you. We'll move on to item 7. And could I just check whether or not we need a break, or are we happy to carry on? Are we carrying on? Good. Okay, I'll carry on with section 7.
Thank you, members. This report includes applications for consideration by members of the discretionary grant budget for key facilities for 23-24. Stewartry Area Committee, grant funding key facilities is the head theme there. Members, over to you. Any comments or questions? Don't see any in the room or online. That being said, we'll move to the recommendations then, which starts off with 7.1 to consider the Stewartry Area Committee scoring panel's recommendations as set out in Appendix 1 and further detailed in paragraph 4.2. Seven 7.2 is to agree awards to be made as detailed in paragraph 4.2 as appropriate, and 7.3 note that the subject to the decision at 2.2 for the 2023-24 budget would be fully committed and the fund closed. Are we happy to proceed with those recommendations? Excellent, thank you. Move on to item number 8. This is the Stewartry Area Committee tackling poverty and inequalities fund allocations. Report by the Head of Communities. This report includes applications for consideration by members for tackling poverty and inequalities budget 23-24, along with the officer scoring panel analysts and recommendations. The total funding available to this committee is £29,238.64, and that's for 23-24. Table 1 at paragraph 4.2 details the scoring panel's recommendations for awards based on the criteria previously agreed by members of this committee. The application scoring is over 80 points are recommended for 100% of requested award, over 50 points for 75% of requested, over 25 points for 50%, and lastly over 24 points and under for 0% of that award. And lastly, Castle Douglas Community Information Technology Centre has been recommended for £6,738.64, consistent with the amount of remaining funds. Ward Officer Sean O'Toole, excuse my pronunciation, is available to answer any questions from members, so I'll open the floor. Nothing at this point, so we can move on to recommendations then. Okay, so 8.1 is to consider the application summaries and scoring panel's recommendations as set out in Appendix 2 and detailed in paragraphs 4.2. We've got 8.2, which is to agree awards to be made as appropriate, And 8.3, note that the subject to the decision at 2.2, the 23-24 budget would be fully committed and the funds therefore closed. Members, are we happy with those recommendations? Great, fantastic. Swiftly moving on to item number 9. Nine is the road network management, street naming, the development adjacent Yurt Place and Springholm report. The report is done by the Head of Roads and Infrastructure. And this report asks members to consider the naming of the new roads being formed at the new development in Springholm, with the proposed names of Culshan Road and Spottisburn Crescent. We've got Principal Technician. Again, you'll need to excuse my pronunciation for this. Is it Charis Colot? Is available online to answer any questions from members, and I'll open that to the members now. My apologies from the interpreter. Not only are the street names a challenge for me, not being a local, but the name there as well. Is there any question, members? Yes, we do. We've got a hand up here.
Thanks,
Councillor
thanks,
Slack.
Chair.
Thanks.
Charis, just I'm not being pernickety here, but I'm looking at 9 and 10. I used to work with Royal Mail, and Royal Mail are always approached for input to naming the housing schemes. Does this not get carried out now at all?
Good morning, thank you, Chair. I believe if there's an issue comes up that it's a similar name to a surrounding area or another street, then yes, we would consult Royal Mail. Otherwise, we consult local members, we consult the community council. If there's no objections and nothing comes up from that, then Royal Mail are brought into it later on when we're actually looking for postcodes and house numbering and things like that.
That's excellent. Thank you very much. Any other questions at this point? Happy to proceed with those recommendations. Excellent. So the members are asked to agree the name of Culshan Road and Spottisburn Crescent as the preferred names for the new roads associated with the development detailed within the appendix. Are we happy to proceed? Great, fantastic. Thank you very much for that. Okay, item 10, that's the road network management. Again, street naming development adjacent Kirk House and B Swing. Report is by the Head of Roads and Infrastructure. Now here, the report asks members to consider the naming of the new road being formed at a development adjacent Kirk House, B Swing, with the proposed name of Lotus View. Again, Principal Technician. Can you help me with that pronunciation if you don't mind? She's online to accept any questions. My apologies.
It's Caris.
Caris, thank you, Caris. Any questions, members? I'm so sorry. Councillor Drysdale. Pauline,
thank you, Caris.
Oh, hi.
Sorry, I couldn't unclick there. Thank you very much for both reports, and I think you're doing very well with the pronunciation of all our very unusually named towns and villages. I'm talking to yourself, John, and your translator there. It was just a question with regards to new builds and sites. Caris, I've noticed that there's been some paths built, which is great for people wanting to walk and cycle, especially in Springholm, because they'll be able to access the primary school safely. In Ayrshire, I know I'm always bringing up Ayrshire as an example. It's just things I pick up when I'm out and about and looking at. They've got new imprints on the new paths to remind people to pick up dog feces and mess, as well as implementing bins with special dog bins. The increase of people owning animals, dogs, has increased a lot since COVID, and keeping our area tidy and clean and safe for children, especially if they're walking or cycling to school, is really important. Do we have a policy in Dumfries and Galloway to speak to these developers to make sure that the paths are well laid out. I know there's a policy in planning with regards to more open space provision, which is really, really important. But is there provision made for additional bins? Do these housing developers have to put bins in for rubbish collection and dog mess? And are there policies put in place for signage on that? You possibly can't answer that question, but this is a question that's being asked by people in our communities where new developments are popping up, which is a good question, I think, from our community members. So any updates on that would be really, really helpful. And I know it's got nothing to do with street names, but it's in the report as safety and health and wellbeing. Thank you, Caris. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, that's absolutely one I'll need to take away for you. It's a little bit out with the roads planning side of things, but I'll speak to my colleagues in planning and my colleagues in the waste service and see what I can find out and return to you.
Fantastic, thank you for that, folks. Now, yeah, the terminology used is obviously challenging, and I quite like Lotus View. It gives it that insect vibe about it there. I quite like that as a former person who looked after animals. Now, so moving on, with that being said, Lotus View as the preferred name, is there any objections to that, or are we happy to agree Lotus View as detailed in the appendix? Yes, all agreed. Right, moving on to 11. That's minutes of Castle Douglas Common Good meeting, which took place on the 24th of May 2023. Members, are we happy to agree the minutes from that last meeting? We have we have that agreement in place. Thank you. Number 12. That takes us to any other business deemed urgent by the chair, with the need for any other further decisions. And I have no further business, and that concludes today's meeting. So thank you all for your contributions, your time and your patience. Thank you. Have a lovely day.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, officers. Bye-bye.